Welcome to the deep dive. We have pulled the lever on the intellectual history machine, and today we are focusing our attention on one of the 20th century's most fascinating and controversial figures,
Yeah, Paul Sartre.
Jean-Paul Sartre, the philosopher who didn't just write about absolute freedom, he lived a life that was a constant public attempt to embody it.
And that's the core of our dives today.
Mm-hmm.
Our sources provide this incredibly rich picture spanning his very unusual biography, his meteoric celebrity,
Right.
and the foundational concepts that really changed how we think about choice and responsibility. So our mission is to take these concepts, absolute freedom, anguish, the human condition, and just unpack them.
And what we learn about his status is surprising right off the bat. When you hear philosopher, you probably picture someone quiet, reserved.
In an ivory tower somewhere?
Exactly, not Sartre. The sources describe him as a genuine superstar. He had the aura of a Hollywood actor at the peak of his glory. We're talking about crowds rushing his conferences in Brazil and photographers waiting for him at airports. He was a pop culture phenomenon.
He really was a superstar of ideas. But you have to remember, his thought was rooted in profound historical turbulence.
Right, he was a product of the time.
A product of the decades surrounding the two world wars. He watched the world, essentially tear up its old blueprints for morality and meaning. So when those certainties collapsed, people were just desperate for a new way to understand their place.
And that's where he comes in.
That's where he comes in. His key work, Being and Nothingness, published in 1943, right in the thick of it.
Wow.
It was meant to be a powerful intellectual cry against any thinking that failed to account for the chaos and for the horrifying freedom that chaos implied.
So let's unpack his path to becoming this philosophical celebrity. He was born in Paris, 1905, and his father, Jean-Baptiste, died just a year later.
And that early tragedy, a lot of biographers suggest, profoundly shaped his entire philosophical outlook.
How so?
Well, Sartre himself felt he'd been spared the presence of a traditional, authoritative superego. He felt unbound. But the environment that resulted was, highly artificial.
Okay.
He was raised by his mother and his maternal grandparents, especially his grandfather, Charles Schweitzer, who treated him with this fanaticism of adoration. He was basically groomed to believe he was a genius.
That sounds like a psychological hothouse, just a setup for radical narcissism. I pulled this quote from his autobiography, the words, "It's quite vulnerable."
Oh, yeah.
He said, "My truth, my character and my name were in the hands of adults. I was a child, that monster they make with their regrets."
Wow. So his whole identity was constructed by how others saw him.
Entirely.
And that constructed paradise, of course, couldn't last. When his mother remarried in 1917, they moved to La Rochelle, and suddenly that external gaze shifted, and it shifted dramatically.
Right, he's not the center of the universe anymore.
It's not at all. He's confronted by other students who are not part of his fan club, and he realizes he's just, as he put it, a little squirt who interested no one. This was the first major break for him.
The bubble burst.
The bubble burst.
Yeah.
And he realized that essence others had given him was completely arbitrary.
A necessary correction, I guess. That recognition of external judgment became crucial. And the next step was his most critical partnership. Back in Paris, he met Simone de Beauvoir.
Castor, as she was known.
Right, Castor. They met while preparing for the philosophy aggregation exam.
Their intellectual chemistry was, by all accounts, immediate and intense. Famously, Sartre finished first and Beauvoir finished second in that 1929 exam.
Amazing.
But what's really groundbreaking is the relationship they built. They called it a total relationship, or necessary love.
Meaning they were intellectually inseparable.
Inseparable. But, and this is the key part, this was strictly coupled with the freedom to pursue other partners, what they termed their contingent loves.
That commitment to absolute relational freedom, it sounds incredibly modern, but also just incredibly chaotic. I mean, did it actually work?
The sources confirm it often led to a lot of drama. They mention Olga Kosakiewicz, which resulted in a triple situation.
A triple.
It was a commitment to living their philosophy, living absolute freedom in their personal lives, no matter what the emotional cost was.
Wait, what? Moving from that to the military? He pulled another genius move when he was called up for service.
He did. He arranged to serve as a meteorologist for the Air Force.
Which meant he had huge blocks of time to just read and write.
He was living that elitist intellectual life.
Yeah.
Prioritizing thought over action until WWII actually caught up with him. Being captured, experiencing military life with other soldiers.
That must have been a shock.
A complete shock. He was removed from his Parisian bubble. He developed a deep sense of solidarity with the other prisoners, and he actually regretted not immersing himself in social issues earlier.
So that was the turning point.
The sources call it the first encounter between the anarchist writer and social history, a definitive, crucial break.
So the man who was worshipped as a genius, then stripped of that identity by war, emerges ready to tell the world that no one has a predetermined essence.
Exactly. That connection seems crucial to understanding his foundational concepts.
So let's get to the core of his existentialism.
We have to start with the central tenet. L'existence précède l'essence. Existence precedes essence.
Okay, can you help us visualize that, maybe with that tech metaphor we talked about?
Absolutely. So think of it this way. The traditional view, philosophy or theology, assumes a human being is like a piece of software.
Yeah.
It's created from a predefined blueprint.
Okay.
The engineers write the code or the template, that's the essence, before the product is ever deployed, before existence. God or nature decides what you are before you even arrive.
So essence comes first, then existence. The blueprint exists before the building.
Precisely. But Sartre, the atheist existentialist, he flips that script entirely. For him, we are thrown into the world. We exist as consciousness, a blank slate with no code, no template.
Okay, so we're just here.
But just here.
Yeah.
And it's only after we exist, through our continuous stream of choices and actions that we define, or code our own purpose. You're not born with a destiny. You are forced to define yourself every single second.
Which gives us that iconic summary. Man is nothing other than the ensemble of his acts.
And this is where the philosophy gets heavy. If we are totally responsible for creating our own essence,
Then there are no excuses.
none. We are condemned to be free and alone without excuses. There's no external authority to blame. And this absolute freedom gives rise to l'angoisse, anguish, anxiety.
But if anxiety is the awareness of total freedom, doesn't that just become paralyzing? I mean, how do you move from that existential panic to actually doing anything?
That's the key distinction. Anguish isn't fear of an external threat like falling off a cliff. It's the profound realization that you are the origin of all your future possibilities.
I see.
The classic height example illustrates this perfectly. The dizziness you feel on a cliff edge isn't just physical. It's the sudden, terrifying realization that you are free to choose to jump.
Huh. That feeling is the weight of self-creation, not the danger of falling.
Exactly. And since that weight is so heavy, humans naturally try to escape it. That escape mechanism is what he called mauvaise foi,
Bad faith.
bad faith. The act of lying to yourself by trying to deny this essential freedom. And Sartre says we do this by oscillating between two things, our facticity and our transcendence.
Okay, let's break those down. Facticity.
Facticity is the simple is, it is the concrete reality of your past, your body, your current job.
Yeah.
The collection of facts that are undeniable about you.
And transcendence.
That's your radical freedom, your power to change, to envision a future that isn't real yet, to project yourself beyond your current facts. Bad faith is when you try to deny one in favor of the other.
And he gives such memorable, really relatable examples of this.
He does. Take the famous example of the waiter. He's overly mechanical, focused, precise. He's performing the role of a waiter with this frantic zeal. He's trying to convince himself and everyone else that he is only a waiter.
He's all facticity.
All facticity. He's
Yeah.
denying his transcendence, the freedom to just walk out, quit, and choose a different life. He's trading freedom for the comfort of a defined role.
We see that everywhere, that idea of playing a role to hide from freedom. And the other great example is the woman on the date, right?
Yes. The woman is on a date. The man rests his hand on hers. She avoids responding. She tries to think of her hand as just a passive object, denying the flirtation.
So she's reducing herself to her facticity, just a body.
Exactly. To avoid taking responsibility for her transcendence, which is the choice to accept, reject, or acknowledge the past. That denial of responsibility, that's the ultimate act of bad faith.
That's all self-inflicted damage. But if bad faith is lying to yourself, the relationship with others is where things get truly destructive.
Oh, yes.
Which leads to his most famous, provocative statement from the play, No Exit. Hell is other people.
And this brings us to low regard the look. When another consciousness looks at you, you are instantly converted.
Converted.
You are a free subject, being for itself, defined by infinite possibilities. The moment they look, they fix a definition on you. That's the coward, that's the loud one, that's the employee. They steal your infinite possibility and return to you a finite object in their world, a being in itself.
So hell isn't necessarily constant torture, it's the constant theft of your subjective freedom by other people's judgment.
Precisely. You are constantly battling for your subjective existence. And Sartre believed that love, hate, even sex, are often just futile attempts to possess the freedom of the other without becoming an object yourself. It's a perpetual, exhausting conflict.
So moving into his post-war years, Sartre decides this philosophy of absolute choice has to mean political action.
Right, he wasn't just preaching freedom in a lecture hall. He demanded political engagement. He joins the PCF, the French Communist Party, shifting very much to the left.
And this shift put a definitive and pretty bitter end to his relationship with Albert Camus.
It was a deep philosophical chasm. Camus rejected revolutionary violence and PCF dogma. He felt it was morally bankrupt. Sartre, though, he saw the political struggle as the necessary expression of his absolute freedom.
A fundamental choice to combat oppression.
Yes, and he was fiercely protective of this position. His rhetoric could be incredibly radical. He once said, "Every anti-communism is a dog."
Wow.
His commitment was total. He was an active anti-colonialist, especially against the French in the Algerian War, and he strongly encouraged the student protests in May '68. This commitment defined his relationship with all institutions.
Which brings us to the Nobel Prize.
His famous refusal of the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1964.
He declined it. He didn't want to be associated with any official or bourgeois institution. He chose independence.
It's an incredibly rare move, and it led General de Gaulle to give him the ultimate high compliment, saying, "One does not arrest Voltaire." But despite his status, his philosophy faced intense critique. From Marxists, analytic philosophers, the social sciences. Let's maybe apply the 3 whys framework to unpack that backlash.
Okay, so why number 1? Why was he criticized?
For focusing so exclusively on the absolute, isolated individual consciousness, critics argued he just minimized the crucial role of socioeconomic and historical constraints.
It was all about the individual, not the system.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Which leads to why number 2. Why did this perspective matter?
Why did it bother people so much?
It mattered immensely to materialists, especially Marxists. They see humans as fundamentally products of their material conditions. So for them, Sartre's ideas were too subjective, too focused on interior feelings, and just impractical for achieving real social change.
So not useful for the revolution.
Not at all.
Okay, so finally, why number 3? Why does his philosophy persist today?
Because it provides this undeniable structure for understanding personal responsibility, self-creation, the search for authenticity. It forces you to look inward and own your choices. It demands you recognize yourself as the final moral authority in your life.
Speaking of moral authority, though, we have to acknowledge the major ethical stain that tarnished his intellectual heritage. His signing of that 1977 petition concerning minors and consent.
It's a necessary, very dark detail. The sources implied this was a tragic reflection of that wider, post-68 French left desire to pursue absolute liberation in all areas.
A kind of extreme transcendence.
An extreme transcendence without factoring in the ethical facticity or the vulnerability of others. It was a spectacular moral failure, one he later regretted.
Okay, so we've covered the life of a man condemned to be free who found hell in the gaze of others. Let's pose our final thought. If Sartre were thrown into modern life, the Silicon Valley hustle, the NYC social pressure, the endless paralyzing choices on a Netflix menu.
The need to define yourself instantly on social media.
Right. How would his concept of anguish manifest today? That dizziness of choice is now amplified by algorithms and endless options.
The amplification is crucial. Sartre believed the fundamental human project, our deep underlying drive, is this futile attempt to become a necessary, complete being.
To become God.
To be God, to be being in itself for itself. But his philosophy shows that human existence is a perpetual state of becoming. It's a project that is condemned to fail in its ultimate goal, because you can never achieve a fixed, necessary essence without annihilating your own freedom.
So we are always defining ourselves by what we are not yet.
Exactly. We are defined by the failure of that final defining project. And if we're fundamentally defined by what we're not yet, are we constantly living in a state of self-made insufficiency?
And the only redemption is the effort itself.
The struggle, the effort, and the choice. That's all there is.
A compelling thought to end on. Jean-Paul Sartre's journey shows us the high price of intellectual activism and the relentless, undeniable burden of freedom. Brilliance and complexity all intertwined.
Our sources gave us a truly comprehensive look at both the philosophical depth and the complex biographical nuance of this unforgettable, really demanding figure.
If you enjoyed this episode, please support the channel by liking the video and sharing it with your friends.